Hello and welcome to In Depth with TommmieMedia. I'm John Westerberg. Today we sit down with Art History Department Chair Victoria Young to discuss the department's 4-year effort to archive and preserve the work of world-renowned architect Bart Vorsanger. He's best known for his role in designing the National World War II Museum in New Orleans, and his work can currently be seen on display in the O'Shaughnessy Educational Center's first-floor lobby. Vorsanger's work also influences the Art History Department's curriculum here at St. Thomas, where he personally lends his unique and extensive architectural expertise to students. Well, Dr. Young, thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
So to start things off, one of the Art History Department's more recent endeavors has been the installation of a gallery that is currently on the first floor of OEC. It's focusing on the architecture and the previous work of Bart Vorsanger. How has the reception of this been so far?
It's been fantastic. You know, it was really important to us that we were able to define our gallery space in the OEC lobby more concretely than we had in the past. If you remember, we had cases just kind of all around the space, and students were kind of interspersed on some old seating, and it just didn't function very well for anything. And we couldn't hang things because the walls are brick around the perimeter of the lobby, so that prevented that from happening. So in order to be able to run an exhibitions program really successfully and really have this visual outreach from the department to the public at large on campus and coming in from outside of campus as well, it became really important to think about how we could create a space in there that could be a gallery. Right.
So what in particular makes St. Thomas a good place to preserve and celebrate Vorsanger's legacy?
Wow, that's a great question. It's a strange coincidence, right, when you meet people in life that change it. And that's one of the meetings I had when I met Bart Vorsanger. So we both served on the Society of Architectural Historians board. And we started talking about his work and the work I was doing. And never met him before, right? And he was based in New York at the time, and here we are in Minnesota. And there was just something, I think, about the way we started talking to each other. And I was working at that time on a project in New Orleans, and he, of course, is designing the National World War II Museum in New Orleans, so we had that in common. And he was also, at that point, 4 years younger than he is now. He just turned 81 a couple of weeks ago. And he started thinking about, you know, running his career kind of to an end, particularly once the World War II Museum project gets done. So he started thinking about what would you do with your architectural legacy? And as you know, if you've been in the exhibition, and I know you have, John, we've been in there together, the work is really good, right? And that was one of the things that drew me to it, is it's visually interesting, and the complexities behind that visual appearance are really powerful. So that was exciting to see, and I knew there were a lot of different ways we could learn from it. So it just was a meeting that turned into something much, much bigger 4 years later.
Wow. So a number of undergraduate students have been involved with the effort to digitally archive Vorsanger's designs. So what was that process like, and how has Vorsanger's work affected the art history curriculum as a whole?
Okay, so on the process of just creating the archive, I'll start there. It's been led by myself and our visual resources curator, Christy Dent. And so Christy's an art historian and a librarian by training. So she's the one who really works more directly with our students to get all the information into the online archive, vorsangerarchive.org. And in doing so, we've had both graduate students and undergraduate students entering information, because if you go in and you look at that archive and you get back to the actual content DM platform it exists within, you'll see, you know, all these separate entries, right, that take 3 years, 4 years to get that much information in. But that's the beauty of a management database, is once you have that metadata put into the system, then if you want to find any building in Napa, California, you can click on Napa and everything related to Napa comes up on a search. So it's you know, everybody's comfortable with that these days, right? You know, we all work in that kind of world, but the entry process for that is important. So students have to, number one, kind of know Bart's work, know the firm's work, that sort of thing. So that's been something I've taken care of in class. Every class I've taught really since I've started this project, and that was, what, several years ago, the first time we had Mr. Vorsanger in here to speak for us. I try to bring him to campus every semester. We're working on things. We talk about his work. Students have to research it more in-depthly. So there's this layer of background information that I can provide through classroom settings, which is really important. But then when you get the archive put in to play by all these students who have helped out with just that process of moving materials around or scanning in images and cleaning them up, there's a lot of different things that go into this. Now we have this tool and we can use it to further be an educational activity, whether it's through partnership and learning grants, individual research projects, whatever it might be. There's really a lot of opportunity with this.
Wow. So you and the art history department have worked really hard, as is obvious right now, to preserve Wersinger's work in various ways, but you've also studied St. Thomas's architectural identity, I guess you could say. So what can you tell us about the campus's sort of unique architectural style?
Yeah, we have a beautiful campus, and when it was first settled back in the early 19th century, we were an all-male school, of course, and we had a seminary, and we had people involved like Archbishop Ireland, James J. Hill, architects like Cass Gilbert, who designed the state capitol building here, and then, of course, Emmanuel Masqueret, who did the cathedral in St. Paul and the Basilica in Minneapolis and our chapel here. Ireland was no slouch when it came to being an architectural patron. He really wanted good people. And it's interesting to just think about that statement right now, because that's the way Wersinger operates too. And I think over the projects I've worked on throughout my life, it's always about more than just an architect designing something. It's about a patron and an architect really creating a vision. And Ireland was the guy to make that happen here. And next year, the university will be celebrating the 100th anniversary of Archbishop Ireland's death. So there'll be a whole founder's year, as we call it. So there'll be a lot of activities going on around that. But the campus then, so, Ireland does what he can and sets up some themes and that sort of thing. But then in the 20s, the university had gone through some tough times. So they brought in the Holy Cross Fathers, so from Holy Cross in Indiana, to kind of help us out a little bit and clean us up in a lot of different ways. But one of the things they did is they thought that architecture would be a really great solution to presenting a new identity. So I'm talking about Aquinas Hall being built in the 20s. Under the auspices of the Holy Cross Fathers and through architects named McGinnis and Walsh, who were out of Boston, who were the leading Catholic architectural firm in this country. So again, patrons who didn't shy away from going after really important architects. And then it's that Gothic Revival legacy in Soda limestone that has really become our brand, right?
Yep.
Whether it's downtown Minneapolis or it's in the ASC, whatever it might be, people know us from that. And that's been really significant for us.
Right. So you kind of touched on this earlier just now. So what makes St. Thomas's architecture unique in comparison to other Twin Cities or Minnesota campuses, and why should we be proud of that? Like why should we celebrate that?
Well, the built environment really does a lot of work in our daily lives, and sometimes we know it and sometimes we don't know it, right? And the architecture of St. Thomas, if you talk to anybody really from the upper Midwest, or particularly folks from the Twin Cities, they all know it, right? It's Gothic Revival, it's Soda limestone, that's what it is. And if you look at McAllister, Hamlin, Augsburg, St. Kate's, the University of Minnesota, those are all campuses where you can't make that same kind of claim. Their architectural idea has been to let the prevalent style of the time, whether it's a Victorian revival or something modern or Gothic revival or traditional classical style, be built as needed to be built and wanted to be built. So there's no real cohesion in all of these other schools, whereas we have not ever let that go away.
Right.
And we've kept that Gothic revival at hand. So anything that's not Gothic revival on our campus probably predates that work in the 20s. There's a couple of exceptions. But by and large, that has been something that we have chosen to stay with. And whenever we think about this campus, we think about that as a legacy to continue forward. So, as we roll out of the master planning process we did a couple years ago as part of the strategic initiatives for the college or for the university, we think about, okay, so if we put some buildings then into that strategic plan, whether it be a new engineering and science building or a new building for the arts, it's going to relate to that identity because that's who we are. That's the language that speaks St. Thomas to people.
Well, Dr. Young, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us today. It's been a treat. If you have a suggestion for an in-depth segment, tweet us at TommmieMedia. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest in TommmieMedia videos. With Dr. Victoria Young, I'm John Westerberg. We'll see you next time when we go in-depth with TommmieMedia.